Good afternoon, everyone. Now's our next session on pivoting to hybrid and virtual events. We've got our panel of experts here to discuss their thoughts and as they look to the future. I'll just do a quick intro for each of our panelists. First up, we have Juliet Tripp, Senior Event Manager at Chemical Watch. Juliet is your go-to girl for all things event strategy and personal development. She's got over 10 years experience in the industry and has her own events blog, trippevents.com, alongside the coaching she does for the event profs as part of her Event Goal Getters membership community and coaching. Welcome, Juliet.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And then we move on to Neil Thompson, founder and MD of the Delegate Wranglers. A lot of you will know Neil already, I'm sure. Delegate Wranglers is the event industry's most engaged platform with over 20,000 event professionals. I think you just hit that milestone recently, didn't you, Neil? So
yeah, a couple of months ago.
Yeah. Official community partner of Facebook now. And it is the go-to place for networking leads, event jobs, blog posts, and calendar listings. And yeah, of course, I'm a big fan of the Delegate Wranglers. We post them there a lot, and I think the conversations you have are absolutely amazing there, and it's such a great platform. So welcome, Neil.
Thank you for having me.
Great. We move on to Simon Walton, who's Creative Director for Silverstream TV, who are remote event production partners on Venues Events Live Digital. Silverstream specialise in live event video production, and when obviously lockdown hit, they turned their skills to creating high quality virtual events. Simon's background is in broadcast TV and, fun fact, was once a presenter on Watchdog alongside Anne Robinson. Didn't know that, Simon, so welcome.
Yeah, if there's one thing that can teach you about how to deal with live stress, then it's working with Anne Robinson.
Great, so we'll kick off to today's session shortly. As everyone knows, within the current climate, it's been impossible for event planners to put on live events. Therefore, we've started to see a transition to delivering virtual events. So coming over to you, Juliet, what has been your experience of virtual events so far?
Yeah, so it's certainly been a crazy year, hasn't it? I think looking back to March, I ran an event over in the States just before we went into lockdown. So I was straight into a hybrid event because suddenly I had to find a way to live stream speakers in from all over the world and have an option for our delegates that didn't feel that they were able or allowed to come. So we were sort of straight in. And from that point onwards, it's just been all systems go at Chemical Watch. We've converted all of our conferences to be online. So yeah, so it's been in a very busy few months. As I will continue to say, I am grateful every single day to still be working and still be busy. But yeah, we've moved all manner of our conferences online and been experimenting with different formats. They're chemical regulatory conferences that I organise usually, global. I don't organise anything in the UK. So it's been interesting to try and sort of deliver to different time zones, different stakeholders, and be as experimental as we can with some quite sort of serious, straightforward content. And then in terms of attending, yeah, I mean, I probably did what everyone did back in springtime, signed up for every single webinar going and every virtual conference, and soon realised this probably isn't sustainable, but I've certainly given it a good try. Had my fair few speaking engagements at virtual events all over the world as well, which has been fantastic. And I do miss being able to see all of you guys and be together in person. But this is what we have right now. So we move, we do it, we make it work.
Definitely. And it's nice to obviously see you virtually, but again, yeah, we're missing that, live experience. So Neil, what has been your experience of virtual events so far within the industry?
Yeah, like Juliet, I'm used to traveling. I mean, before I went full time in the Delegate Wranglers, I come from a background of being an event manager, so traveling all over the place, and even doing the Delegate Wranglers, I'd be going all over the country, visiting venues and things like that. So of course that all had to stop, and then all the kind of online virtual events came on. And yeah, I agree with Juliet, it's massively flooded, your friends having drinks on Zoom calls and everything, every few days. And it's funny how that's kind of like eased off a little bit really now, and I think people are a bit more picky about, you know, what events they attend. Being on events, it's been a bit mixed, you know, attending them. Sometimes they have technical issues, sometimes they don't, sometimes it runs fine. I think people are willing to accept, you know, a bit of problems with technical issues, you know, because that's the way it is. You know, for me, always content is king. And, you know, it's so important if you can get some really good content, you know, people will put up with a bit of technical issues and things like that. And if you can make all your kind of events that you put on, if you put them on yourself, really engaging and different and mix it up, you know, it's going to be fine. And they're the ones I really enjoy. And that's what we try to do at the Delegate Wranglers with our kind of live things that we do.
Great. And obviously I know you've pivoted to hosting the DW Lives every week, which are, you know, a great tool for the industry. Do you just want to talk us through that idea and how that came about?
Yeah, I'd never done anything like that before. It was something that I was aware, you know, that I needed to move into. You know, I see like Juliet, me and Juliet have followed each other for a while on Instagram and on Facebook and stuff. You know, Juliet's like the queen of like, you know, talking to camera and being really super professional. But I've never done that, you see, before. So I was a bit worried, you know, having a face for radio rather than TV. it was a bit of a scary prospect, you know, going on and then doing that. But, you know, you get to realize that you just have to be yourself, you know, and it's your personality and coming across as genuine and authentic is what it's all about, you know. And if you've got the trust of people, you know, they will kind of enjoy your shows and get involved and interact and, you know, be loyal to you as well. So we've been putting on these shows during lockdown every week, which is we're on number 32 now. So quite an achievement. Yeah, and you know we make sure they're always free. They're upskilling sessions where, you know, we get people on to talk about, you know, it could be anything from like coaching to first aid to stress management to LinkedIn training, Canva training, you name it really, you know, talking about sales, anything really what we think will be of benefit to people. So people are learning brand new skills, and we took that decision early on the Delegate Wranglers with, you know, when we went into lockdown and stuff, that we would just try and help people flat out as much as we can. You know, and so it's proved, you know, people have really enjoyed those sessions and they've grown and grown, and they're now becoming like, you know, a commercial thing where we're getting sponsors and things like this on them. So who knows where that's going to go in the future. But yeah, we're really enjoying it. And one thing about COVID, you know, it kind of forced me to do that. So I'm a great believer in kind of, you know, I don't know what the word is, you know, pivoting or changing or adapting or being fluid. You know, it's all these things really. You've got to adapt and you know, be malleable to bend with the situation. Don't just accept that it is what it is. You know, you don't have to make it happen. Go and change things and you know, yeah, use that time wisely.
Yeah, and a positive mindset always helps, of course, within that situation. Definitely. Coming over to you, Simon, now, obviously, as a supplier to the industry, mainly working on live events and live exhibitions, what has been your experience of virtual events so far?
Well, yes, usually behind the camera, so it's very unusual for me to be here. It feels very strange. But yes, I mean, like so many people in the events industry, when lockdown happened, we just thought it was game over, really, because we had so many events lined up, everything cancelled, and we didn't really know where we would go. We have a client with the BACP. We do all their training events, live stream them to their members of counsellors and psychotherapists. And they got in touch and said, right, we're going to cancel all our events. You know, how much do we have to pay you for cancellation? And we thought, well, under the circumstances, we won't charge you anything for cancellation, but do we really need to cancel them? You know, we have big audiences for these events online. Could we just do them like this? And they said, oh, all right then. And then we started to experiment and to run events online. We have a piece of technology that we've been using for some time to bring experts and government ministers into conferences virtually, so they can't be there, but they can be there online. And we've simply expanded that technology to be able to do this, to be able to do, you know, multi-person panel discussions and PowerPoint presentations, all that sort of thing. And this is it in action now. So this is Venues and Events Live, coming live to you from our offices. And if I can take you over here to meet Mel, who is currently operating this session. So she now on this technology has control over all of our images coming in from wherever we are. And then over here is Toby, who's got the next session, the Zumba, which is at 1:25, is it? We're getting ready for the Zumba session. So we've sort of, by putting these two galleries, we call them, together, we're able to keep a live event flip-flopping between the two operators, and it helps us to kind of lift it. I mean, Zoom calls are great, and it's great that everybody's able to just kind of put on their own event themselves. But if you need something a bit extra with a bit of production, something that's up to the standard of what your event normally is, then this is, I think, the tool to do it. And so we started doing that, and then it sort of snowballed, really. In America, they seem to have a tradition of having a lot of their conferences in August, so we kind of got onto a wave of doing a lot of conferences for the States in August, events all over America that we would never normally cover, but we cover them from here in Plymouth, and it's been an exciting ride. It's been a challenging ride, but we've learned a lot, and are now ready to do virtual.
That's great, and obviously it's great to everyone to see a sneak peek of actually how we're running the event. You mentioned something really relevant there. Do we need to cancel events? Obviously, Venues and Events Live is a trade show. It's been running for over 15 years in London, and obviously we launched in Manchester last year. So we obviously made that objective to ourselves to transfer and pivot as such to a virtual event. Juliet, what are your thoughts on, cancelling or transitioning to virtual events? How do you kind of make that decision process, and how did you guys at Chemical Watch make that decision process?
I think for anyone looking to transition or to move or to pivot, the main thing to think about is your why and your strategy behind every single event you're producing, whether that is a trade show, a conference, a meeting, a focus group, anything. And as long as you've got that clear strategy on what you're delivering and why to your audience and who they are, then that should inform your decision. Because I think we were very clear that we moved to virtual, and we could deliver our content virtually. At Chemical Watch, we have live stream conferences for a few years now, so it's always been sort of there, the virtual element. But maybe some people kind of panicked, moved too quickly and cancelled, or they moved too quickly, went to virtual and realised this isn't for us. So I think really a lot of events can become virtual because that's our option. That is our option right now. But it's knowing your why, it's knowing your strategy. And I'm probably going to talk about strategy throughout this conversation, because I'm always saying set your event goals, keep them in mind throughout every single point of the process, because if you've got that clear mission and vision, you know what you're doing every step of the way, and it will keep everyone on track, every stakeholder that's involved with your event. So that's my view on cancelling or carrying, really.
Definitely. And then just brings you to Neil, actually. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, we've had lots of news in the industry recently, obviously, with the announcement on Tuesday. And now we have, a further 6 months as such to wait. But we've obviously seen some big key industry events either postponing to next year or some actually transitioning to make that virtual statement. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's so tough for for everybody involved, really. Not just the venues, but the event organisers. People were making bookings, and then the venue. What you do as a venue holder, as a venue, you hold them to it and say you owe some money. You try and cancel it. You try and postpone it. It's somewhere in between all those three things is what actually happened. So it was difficult for everybody all around. We did hear some good stories from venues who were happy to just like refund and cancel, and what they've had to do is make the kind of terms and conditions really fluid and really open, because if you make them too rigid, people just won't book anything. But what it actually comes down to for me, Sarika, is we need some certainty from the government. We need certainty. You mentioned there about that 6 month date. They told us about that. This is not a go with the government, because I do believe that they're trying their best in difficult situations. But we found out about this 8 days before the 1st of October, when we were supposed to be able to go, do larger events and things. if they're telling us it's going to be 6 months, at least build in monthly updates on how we're doing that against that date, so that we can plan ahead with our clients and give our clients some confidence. Because it's just, it's just not reasonable. I mean, a shop can close for 2 weeks and then open the next day, and they'll get customers in straight away. Events industry doesn't work like that. We need lead time. We can't just pop up an event for 500 people, next month and suddenly let's go again. So I think we need, a lot more communication. Just to be, my one criticism of the government is that they don't embrace, the 70 billion or whatever figures you read, pounds worth of business that we bring to the UK economy each year. So I just wish they would understand that, because then they would maybe embrace it a bit more. And, we never even get a mention in any of these. I know they can't mention every industry, but one that brings 70 billion quid is a huge, it's something like the third biggest industry or something in the UK, but we never get a mention. So it'd be nice to know that, they had a plan for us to get back to normal, because the knock-on effects of businesses is so big. I think in the meantime, people, to answer your question, people are rightly doing online events, rather than cancel it completely. And, they're doing the best with what they can, sometimes at really short notice and things like this. But, the sooner we can get back to real events and then use these online things as well, to get that extra reach, the better, because it's going to open up a whole new world of opportunity for everyone. I'd like to see there being more jobs in the industry eventually when we're able to come back. Because venues are going to need more people to kind of make them work, to do all the testing and on registration and things like this, all the guidance. And then there's going to be a lot more tech people who are needed to kind of be in these conferences live as well. So, long term, I think we will probably do quite well. But short term, it's really difficult at the moment. And, that news was like a kick in the teeth yesterday. You just, as Juliet said, you've got to hold yourself accountable, stay positive, and keep trying to hit your targets. Adjust your targets if you need to, but at least have something to aim at. Definitely.
Yeah, of course. And then obviously that brings me over to you, Simon. How obviously has this affected your business, and how, you've given us a quick insight into how we're running venues and events live, but how has the business fully transformed into running these virtual events? Can you give us some examples of, some other virtual events that you've run?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we realised that all the cameras, all the LED screens, all of the other kind of kit that we would normally take to a venue to run event TV, which is our kind of main product before lockdown, none of that could be used. So this is all we can do. Virtual events is pretty much all we can do. We're beginning to send some cameras out to do live injects from people's offices and studios, but there's only a little bit of that at the moment. And of course, after yesterday's announcements, there's probably going to be less of that. In terms of what we found was we were already moving in this direction slowly because of climate change, and it was clear that it wasn't really sustainable for people to jet all over the world to be at events all the time when there's an opportunity for them to watch them online. And indeed, we'd seen it with an event like the World Architecture Festival that we've been streaming for a few years, where they would get many, many times more people watching online around the world and long afterwards, both live and watching the content later. And New Scientist Live, where we would gather up all of the theatre content, which they would then, or it is now available on their website for subscribers. So these things were happening, but obviously lockdown has accelerated it and forced people to do it. One of the events we were doing in the summer was for American event organizers, and they were taking polls about when they thought they would be getting back to live events. And there was a general kind of conclusion that in the future, every event would have to have two options: be there in person or be there virtually. So the hybrid model. because people want the choice to be able to go, or they want the choice to be able to be part of the event online. So we can see that working because we've seen it work already, even before COVID, with some of our clients. And obviously it's a tough one, because the idea of giving your content away so people don't have to be there is a tough one for organizers to get to grips with, and for the revenue to work around. But you know, that change is being forced, and so we see that when the people who do make that revenue model work, and the sponsors do stay with it, you know, we'll then have a really strong model for going back to doing live, but keeping the online audience as well.
Of course. Just talking about obviously virtual events, Juliet, how have you adapted to the virtual world? Is there any new skills that you've had to learn, obviously, putting on a virtual event? Have you had any training or, you know, going forward?
Yeah, it's been such a learning curve. I mean, I am very, very lucky to be part of an incredible events team, and we have an in-house AV production team who actually, before COVID, have been saying for so long, oh, we should try doing a virtual conference. How funny. But yeah, but they're brilliant. So actually, as an individual, I haven't had to fully learn all of the technical side in and out. But I think what's been very helpful is knowing what to do from a speaker perspective, because I can brief my speakers and ensure that they're confident and they're happy with how they're transitioning from being on stage to being in their home office or wherever they may be in the world. So I think learning communication all over again to communicate this new skill in this new world has been super important. And I've been spending a lot of time looking at strategy as well, working on some strategic projects, and going back to that, going back to the why. A lot of conversations with our clients and customers to see what it is that they need before we move forward and we continue to build on this. So I think those are sort of some of the key things that I've learned, and I will continue to learn. I'm a huge believer that you can sort of never be an expert, you can never know enough. So I will forever be investing in my own personal development, in things that I can read and listen to, you know, things like Neil's sessions online on the Facebook group are brilliant because they're just so easily accessible, and I think the whole industry is so grateful that there are things like that out there. You just need to know where to look. So I'd say to anyone thinking they'd like to learn some new skills, don't get overwhelmed with everything that's out there, but maybe think about what is it that you want to take forward? What would you love to be doing in 5 years' time, and how can you leverage the opportunities right now, which many of are free, to learn more and be ready.
Of course. And how about yourself, Neil? Obviously, you said you've never done anything like this. Obviously, I know you work with a few partners on your events, but training-wise, is there anything that you think, you know, event planners need to undertake to perform virtual events and produce them?
Well, you know what, I believe what Juliet said then as well. You know, we're not all experts in everything. You know, some people think they are, but we're not. We're truly not. So we had Josh King on from EMC3 last week, and Josh gave us a really interesting slide, and Simon will probably attain to this as well. But there was something like 10 different roles needed to kind of produce, you know, any kind of a large scale conference, you know, from, you know, marketing it and, you know, promoting it right through to the production side, to the speaker briefing side, to the audience communication, all this kind of thing. There was something like 10 roles. So there's a lot of things out there, guys, you know, and I would actually say it's a great opportunity to retrain. I mean, at the moment, you know, this is really sad, but, you know, there are some people who have lost their jobs, and my heart, absolutely, Julia, I'm grateful, you know, for every day that I'm working and that I'm busy. But for those people who've lost their jobs, you know, this is like, you've got to try and see this as a free hit for you to go and do something that you've always wanted to do. So you could retrain and do the job that you always dreamed of, you know, be that an event or not. There's lots of free support out there and lots of free courses. Never been so much stuff online to watch. You know, YouTube's just like an Aladdin's cave of training things. You know, I watch them all the time, and podcasts, listen to podcasts all the time as well. You know, there's just so much out there. Take advantage of it. You know, choose what you want to do. I think you know, as we discussed earlier, at the beginning, everybody was just going on every course going, and you know, your head was exploding. You know, mine was. But choose the ones that you really want to go on to. You know, think about it carefully. You know, this is a free hit for you if you have lost your job, and you know, my heart bleeds for those people. But use the opportunity, turn it into a positive. You know, I'm always telling my kids, you know, do a job that you really love. You know, make sure now this might be your opportunity to do it. So yeah, I've had to learn to be a presenter. You know, I've had to learn those skills. You know, I'm lucky that I've got Dom next to me, who's like super cool presenter. He's really at ease, and I learn things from him, you know, all the time. And then we get people come on. We had like Sam Allen on. You know, Sam super swish as well. You know, and I love learning from those people. I pick up little tips all the time. But there's so many different skills out there, you know, and they're developing all the time. So yeah, my advice is think about what you want to do, choose wisely, the courses that you want to go on, and you know, go head first into it. You know, learn as much as you can. Be like a sponge. Use this time wisely while you can.
Definitely. And obviously, Simon, a lot of people don't have those technology skills to host virtual events, and that's where you guys fit in quite nicely because you have that expertise. What would you give advice to event planners, you know, worried about the technology side of things and how, you know, running in a virtual event, and what advice would you give them, obviously, with that?
Oh, that's a big question. Well, I mean, you know, I suppose the first thing is you can experiment on the nursery slopes yourself. You can do, you know, Zoom events and sort of get things rolling in that way. Then, you know, if you get to the stage where you need our help to give it the polish, then I suppose the key thing is about the communications and planning. And as Juliet said earlier, it's about having the goals in mind, so you know where you're heading. And then, you know, we've had to develop all sorts of techniques for getting content around, because people up until a while ago were all working from home, and then we were having to get video content around, having to get schedules around, having to get all sorts of artwork around, and all. So we sort of developed ways of using Google Drive, WeTransfer, and keeping it all in the right place. So it's sort of in the planning, knowing where you're heading and keeping track of where you've got to, and then handing us over the plan so that we can execute it. And you've done a really good job of that, of putting the schedule together, all of the contacts. We go through a testing process, so we make sure that everybody's able to get through their corporate firewall or whatever it might be to get them in, so there aren't any hitches on the day. So it is a lot about planning, knowing where you're heading, and knowing what the technology can do. We do like to be challenged. We do like it when people come to us and say, do you know, would you ever be able to do so and so? And we've had a few interesting things. One of the big things that came out of doing two of the big shows that we did very early on, the national running show, digital, and then the virtual rugby show. So these were both on this platform, Hopin. So there's a lot to learn about the different platforms that you can use, if indeed you need to use a platform. You don't always need to. And one of the things that came out of the rugby show was that they were able to get much bigger names to their virtual event than they would ever dream of getting to Coventry for the actual event, because for that they might have to come up the night before, overnight, do their thing, and then travel back to where they're from. With a virtual event, you probably only take about an hour of their time, and you can get them into the virtual event, and then they're finished. So they got some really big names in rugby for that event, simply because it was straightforward to do. And that's given them new ideas of when they get to do the live event again, they actually could bring in some of these stars virtually. So they'll be part of a stage show, part of a discussion, but they won't actually need to travel there. So that sort of virtual or hybrid works both ways. It's not just about the people viewing, it's about the people visiting and being part of your content.
Of course. Juliet, then, what would be your top tips for anyone looking to execute a virtual event? And why do you think these would be important?
Yeah, oh, there's so many. So I'm going to go back
Yeah.
because I told you I'd go back to this. Know your why. Know your why 100 times over. Know how to communicate it internally, externally. Why are you putting on this event? As I said, that's important because it just keeps your goals at the core throughout every single touch point throughout the planning process. So that's really important. I'd say ask your audience as well. So really profile your audience and use this time to get to know them the best that you can. Find out what it is that they want. Is networking their biggest thing? If so, what are you offering them in terms of networking? There are some incredible entertainment options out there, but for example, for the conferences that I organise, that isn't appropriate. So I can't just throw on a band in the break because it's just not relevant and everyone would just turn off. But for some events, that's absolutely needed. So try and understand their needs and how you can help with them. And then I think probably rehearsal, just know that actually takes a bit of time to get everyone ready. Certainly with our previous live events, I feel like, it was all done on site and there wasn't so much prep before, but now certainly if you're doing any pre-recorded stuff as well, that takes time. And as a speaker, if I'm speaking at if I'm doing a pre-recorded presentation, the workload goes up massively because you've got all that prep time before, and then you probably still have to dial in live on the day anyway for questions and things. So just don't underestimate the rehearsal time and handhold. Your speakers might never have presented virtually. They might not know all the tips and tricks and how you should be setting up your little home studio, so to speak. So make sure that you spend that time with everyone that's involved in your virtual event, because it'll only make for a more successful outcome and hopefully repeat customers. But yeah, anyone at any stage, if they have any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll try and share the thing that I've learned.
Of course. And same question to you, Neil. What would be, your top tips on putting on a virtual event, and what do people that have never done this before need to really consider?
Yeah, well, Juliet's stolen half of them.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I had the why as my first one. Why are you putting it on? That should be the first question that you ask all the time. Not just like, well, we always do an annual conference. Why? What's the point? And with it going virtual, that changes everything. Do you really need to do it, or do you need to do it differently? Do you need to do it in smaller groups or whatever? Think about, reassess what you've always done into what you actually need now. And you can only do that by really polling your audience and getting some feedback. So I do have some other little tips. Ensure you build in breaks. These are some little practical ones. Zoom fatigue is a serious thing. We all have it where we're just online too much and you just start switching off. And the last thing you want to do is for people to walk out and have a coffee go and make themselves a coffee or a comfort break or whatever in the middle of an important session. So don't have your sessions too long. Keep them fairly punchy and build in those breaks for people to go and do those things that they need to do. I would also say get in experts. Get in experts to do the production side. Simon's paid me to say that officially. No, he hasn't. No, but I would say get in experts. So I've seen some people try and do these things on their own, and they're nearly always technical problems. Everything's fine in rehearsal. Everything works. As soon as you go live, crazy things happen. So if you want to eliminate that risk, it will cost you a bit more money. But you know what? You would do it in real life. You wouldn't try and produce an event in person, would you, on your own? So getting some technical help, people who can really help you and take out that risk. Brief your speakers, and like Julia said with rehearsals, it's really important. If you're doing any pre-recorded stuff, build in time for that, because the problem with pre-recorded stuff is people have got time to change their mind and can we go one more time again? So that kind of happens. Build in time for that. Whereas if it's live, isn't it? That's it. It's one shot. So make sure you build in time. There's even stories of some agencies, and Simon might do this as well, but they'll even send out like webcams and mics to people. If they haven't got it, they send out packs to people, in terms of like the full briefing pack. So things like that are really useful. Give them a full briefing like you would, if you were doing a real event. And then also I'd say during the event as well, you know, interact with them, you know, make sure you talk to your audience, make sure you get feedback, ask for questions, you know. Instagram and Facebook Live and things like that are great for doing this. You know, you can run polls live whilst you're doing them. And they're so useful to just engage your audience and to keep them with you all the way through. Because, you know, as usual, there's a traditional, I mean, Simon might have figures on this, or Juliet, but, you know, you kind of, you start it with a high and then people drop off and then come back in again and drop. And it's a bit of a kind of seesaw. So you need to try and keep them engaged, you know, all the way through your session, but make them short, punchy. Like Juliet says, you know, happy to pass on any of the things that I know. I should say that I know, but I've actually learned from people on the shows. Have told me a lot of these things, so I'm trying to use all that combined advice. But yeah, feel free to drop me a line if you need any help with anything.
Definitely. I want to switch up the topic a little bit and Simon, come to you about the possibilities of, you know, hybrid events and how you guys can help run that type of hybrid event. Obviously, you're used to traditional AV on site at a live event. You've now pivoted to virtual events, but how do you see the hybrid events working from a technology point of view?
Well, a lot of this technology we're using today, we've been using in live events. You know, the ability to move images around, put people up with their PowerPoints, and bring in different images. That was something we'd been working on for some time at a product we call Conference which is what we use to capture live stream and capture for the long term conference content. So that's certainly something that people can do, and the idea is to make it sort of affordable rather than being a huge, bunch of people and lots of kit. It's just one operator with a little bit of a remote control kit. In terms of tips, I mean, there was the one thing I've learned really about this world is make it entertaining. Because unlike the sort of captive audience that you have at a conference, you know, your audience online is obviously able to go anywhere on the internet and go anywhere around the house, you know, and be distracted very easily. So, you know, it's a great trick to make it entertaining, making it very attractive for people to stay with it and keep it as was said before, you know, keep it short. So in terms of how hybrid's going to go, well, certainly, you know, once people have started to find that they can get an audience online, not just in their territory, but all around the world, and build their brands in that way, then I think, you know, there'll be the opportunity to have the revenue that allows them to put on the event both physically and also in a hybrid way.
Great. And Juliet, what do you think the future will hold for events as we're looking forward to more positive things happening next year? Do you think hybrid will be the future of events? Do you think there's a need to offer that hybrid element?
Yes. Whether it's the future forever, I'm not sure. I don't have a crystal ball, but it certainly has its place in the future, the immediate future, and we need to be planning for it. As I mentioned, you know, we've done it before and we will continue to do that. With our conferences, because they are so global and they bring in stakeholders from all over. So we fly in speakers and our staff and possibly delegates too. So that's really key. And with hybrid, I think the key is engagement. It's so important, because you don't want the people at home or from their offices to feel like they're sort of second class and they're not experiencing this amazing event and the content live. So it's all about, now we need to learn how to connect the different audiences. We need to know how to make people feel safe, because when we do start running events again, people are likely going to be a little bit nervous and they might have had to jump through quite a few hoops getting tested or running it past their management, etc., to come to our events. So knowing that we can communicate sort of the safety measures that we're putting in place is really important as well. But yeah, to answer the question, yes, hybrid events certainly going to be important, and I think that yes, we may never go back to fully live only ever again. There's always going to be some sort of virtual element, and some companies will maybe only do virtual because they've realized, going back to the sustainability point, that's really important, or travel bans and time management. We're suddenly seeing that we're getting hugely more global audiences to our conferences from going virtual. So I do hope that continues when we move into that hybrid format. So yeah, lots to think about, but yes, they're important.
Definitely. How about you, Neil? What are your thoughts on the hybrid side? Are there any types of events that you don't think will lend themselves to hybrid or virtual? Or do you think that's the way the industry kind of needs to go now, moving forward?
I think very much it will be here, and I mean it would be a missed opportunity, I think, to not have, say we do go back to in-person events, to not also embrace hybrid events as well. I think they'll actually stop getting called hybrid events. I think it'll just be the norm that you will have an online offering. So yeah, it'll just be the norm. The new normal. I never said it, but it will just be the norm that we have an online offering as well, because it extends your reach so much as well. Suddenly, instead of just a conference for 1,000 people, you've got a conference for 10,000 people who potentially can tune in. The danger is slightly converse to what Juliet says for me, whether people will just want to watch online and just stay away from events because it's a bit easier. I don't have to be out the office for 4 days. So we've got to make sure for the people who want to go to those events that it's attractive for them to go. So almost like, I think you should almost be rewarded if you do go, because you're going to get some extra little bits, as well as the interaction and that human kind of interaction that you've got, and those chance meetings that you have. I think let's dumb it down, but we can we've proved we can have meetings online, we can host and we can train and we can learn and we can develop and converse online. The reason you really go to a conference is those moments that you go for lunch or dinner with somebody, or you have a coffee, or you have a chance meeting with somebody who knows somebody. That's a bit harder to replicate online. So whilst I'm not advocating one or the other, I think both of them should be embraced, particularly, online, the reach that it gives you. Again, I agree with, sustainability issues. Yeah, it helps with that, because, do we need speakers to fly halfway around the world to give a 20-minute talk? Maybe not. Maybe they can do it online now. People can still attend the event, but maybe people don't need to travel as much, and do their, and then, those like Simon said earlier, the charges for those people are a lot less expensive, because they're not taking 4 or 5 days out of the office. They're only taking an hour. So you're only booking them for the kind of the talking time. So I just think, we need to be, the main thing I want is for real, events in person to get back. But on the caveat to that, I do want to see events, going forward as well, with online opportunities as well. With regard to events that are hard to replicate, I think networking events are hard to replicate in an online environment. Really tough. I mean, everybody's having a go at it. I don't know if Simon, have you had any experience, or Juliet, have you had any experience of any that have worked for you? It's quite difficult to do, isn't it?
Well, interestingly, when I was looking at Hopin, I was somebody was telling me about the Fit Summit, which is run out of Singapore, which runs on Hopin, and so I thought I'd take a look. And of course, it's on Singapore time, so it's like 5 or 6 hours ahead.
10 hours ahead. Yeah.
So, their event was on and I was still in bed. So I sat in bed and I was attending their event, and I was networking with people, in Singapore in the fitness world. Very strange experience, but, not something I would normally do, go to a fitness event in Singapore and mingle in my pajamas. But,
Great. Just want to throw something out there just before we end shortly. It's kind of a question that we kept getting up yesterday. A lot of people are organising, Christmas parties, award dinners and those types of things now. Do you think those could be done as, virtual or hybrid events in the future? Just throwing it out to anyone in the panel there, if you've got any ideas.
We've been doing it. You've
been doing it, Simon. That's interesting.
Yeah. If you go on YouTube and look at the British Book Awards 2020, that was we streamed that live. It was actually, we streamed it live, but it was actually pre-recorded, the awards themselves, and we're working on others now. We did an awards yesterday actually for a virtual event where a lot of it was pre-recorded, but the reveals were live. So there are ways to do awards in the virtual world and keep the surprise until it actually goes out. And then actually what you can do at that time is wrap around all the social media, because you already have the content ready. And when we did the book awards, we were pushing out all the winners on Twitter and Instagram as they happened, because we had all of that video ready to go. In normal, we would be doing what we call video at the speed of Twitter, where we're chopping up the live video on the spot and tweeting it out. But because it was all pre-recorded, we were able to push it out in a very organized fashion, and it gave it an enormous reach, even though there was nobody able to go to the Grosvenor House to attend the event.
Well, there you go then. It can be done, guys. And if you need any help, Simon's the man to talk to. But I just want to wrap it up by saying thank you to our panel. It's been really interesting and, really insightful. And a lot of people have been commenting on how, useful this conversation has been to them when they're considering planning their virtual events. So just want to thank you all very much for attending and speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much. Cheers. Bye.